The Department of International Relations has confirmed the safe return of 23 South Africans who were allegedly trafficked to Myanmar under false job promises in Thailand. Meanwhile, a group of 50 individuals, including several minors, escaped from a house in Lombardy East. The ages of those involved range from 13 to 24 years old. This marks the second instance this year where undocumented foreign nationals have been found in this specific area, raising serious questions about the ongoing issues of human trafficking and the exploitation of vulnerable individuals. To gain a deeper understanding of human trafficking networks that may be operating in our country and the plight of these young foreign nationals, let's now bring in Unchain Our Children special investigator, Amy Arnold. Amy, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. Let's start off with the definition of human trafficking. What is it?
Well, it is the acts and the means and the purpose, meaning acts, what is done, means how it is done, and purpose for what type of exploitation it is done. In very simple language, it's modern day slavery, but it must have those three elements to be trafficking.
Okay, so just quickly, let's go through those three elements that you speak about, because they're quite different to, for instance, kidnapping for extortion.
Yes, so acts is what is done. So that could be recruiting, the transporting, the transferring, the harboring, the selling of an individual. Means is how it is done. So is it done by kidnapping? Is it done by threat or use of harm? Is it done by abuse of power? Those type of things, or is it done by giving of money? And the purpose is always for exploitation. Mm-hmm. And the South African law is very great because it doesn't narrow that for us. It gives us a broad definition. It says any exploitation. So we often think of sex and labor, but it could be for pornography. It could be for debt bondage, illegal marriage, forced begging, any way you can exploit it that's present along with the acts and the means, then it's trafficking.
Yeah. What happens in the case where, as an example, somebody is promised a job opportunity? They know that they will be entering the country illegally, as an example. I'm going to start off with that example. Entering the country unlawful, they don't have the right documentation, probably stuck into a container, like we've heard in this particular example with some of the cases coming out of Lombardy East. In that particular case, is the individual consenting to be trafficked? I wonder if there even is such a thing.
You cannot consent to be trafficked. That is a great point. You can consent to be smuggled, right? So the difference between smuggling and trafficking often gets confused, and I'll clear it up really quick. Smuggling has to cross a national border. You can be trafficked in your own home. It has to be willingly or consenting, and you cannot consent to trafficking. And there has to be other exploitation when it comes to trafficking, and it doesn't have to be with smuggling. Smuggling, I can just get someone across the border, albeit illegal, but if no one else is going to exploit them, then it's not trafficking. So yes, you cannot, because with that means section, with the kidnapping, use of form, or use of harm or threat, you can't consent if one of those is being used against you.
Yeah. Then there's the luring under false pretense with the case of the 23 South Africans. They were promised lucrative job opportunities. They then go to Thailand, but once they get to Thailand, their documentation is then confiscated. Make us understand what happens in that particular case.
So that is a classic case. When people are recruited into trafficking, it's for the false promises of mostly three things, and that's employment, education, and relationship. So we see these false ads opportunities all the time. And because technology is everywhere and the world is getting smaller, these call center jobs are becoming more and more popular, and the traffickers are getting clever and using them. So yeah, it's desperate people, vulnerable people, out of work. You know, South Africa has the highest unemployment rate of any country in the world. So we've got just a big pool of vulnerable people here. So they see an ad, it seems too good to be true, which means it usually is, but not everyone understands that. And then they go to what they think is a job, and then they get used for something else.
Yeah, and what are the current trends then showing us? Because, well, South Africans are perhaps maybe very vulnerable to being exploited and to be trafficked because of the high unemployment rate that you've just pointed out. But what we find as well in the case of South Africa is also a destination for those who have been trafficked.
Yes, so we're very unique here in that you're a destination and a source country and a transit country. So most South Africans actually that are trafficked within its own borders, or at least stay in Southern Africa. The ones that get the most media attention are the ones that get returned home. Like, this is a fantastic case, and it's a great job by everyone involved to get these 23 South Africans home. But obviously, that's going to make the headlines a little bit more than someone being exploited in their own home. But yeah, we are all three: a source, destination, and a transit country.
Yeah, and what is it then about our systems that are in place? Because we actually have a National Committee for Human Trafficking under the Department of Justice. So what is it about the systems that are in place that make it still vulnerable to becoming a country that can be used for hosting, transiting, as well as exporting?
So the laws and legislation here are fantastic, but there's still a really big problem with implementation. And unfortunately, there's a lot of broken parts in the system. And I say that having worked with some fantastic government officials and being on some of these task teams myself. But it's still really hard to go in and report trafficking. It's still really hard to get police to understand what it is. It's hard to get police to help you. We're starting to change that. I'm starting to train and do workshops with government stakeholders on the law and on this. But, you know, if they don't classify it right, or if a police officer doesn't take the report seriously, then a victim, unfortunately, gets bounced around. I've seen that too many times where they can't simply report it. So we're working within a broken system, unfortunately, and a lot of it has to do with accountability.
Yeah,
and corruption.
And I think also the difficulty being that you have a problem with undocumented foreign nationals, which obviously, as we know, that even police officers and investigators, they form part of our society and are sometimes conditioned in a certain way to see things in a certain way. And I can only imagine from somebody perhaps who've escaped from Lombardy, one of those houses in Lombardy, trying to go and report a case at the police station and say, hey, listen, I've been trafficked. Perhaps maybe the first thing that would come to the mind of the investigator is this person is an undocumented foreign national. And that's what we've seen, for instance, with this case as well, is they face potential charges of contravening the Immigration Act.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. That is exactly what happened in Lombardy. And it's alarming when I watched the police interview. And again, I'm super glad everyone's safe. But when you watch it, the police even admit to the fact that it looks like they were being held against their will. However, they're currently being held as illegal immigrants. And that's going to affect how things get processed. Now they're treated as criminals right now while they're investigating, and they should be being treated as victims. And that's going to be a big difference.
Yeah. A final one is, in the interview yesterday, one of the translators, Ethiopian translators, was saying that the people who have been trafficked also indicated, or let me say allegedly been trafficked, also indicated that along the route there are some individuals also who had died and their bodies just get dumped.
Yeah. No, it's a very common thing. You know, when they're traveling from Ethiopia, a lot of times Ethiopians we've seen have been traveled in like fuel tankers and that sort of stuff, just horrible, horrible conditions. And of course they're going to die. And I'm not sure. It's just really sad for the families. The families may never, ever know what has happened to their loved one.
Yeah. Thank you so much for making time for us, Amy. Amy Arnold is from Unchain Our Children. She's a special investigator there, and this is in relation to human trafficking that's currently facing the country, whether we use as a transnet point, as is indicated, but also sometimes hosting, and then you also have the exporting or sending of people who would become victims of human trafficking. Thanks so much for making time for us. Still